founder and executive director of Age Out Angels. We're a 501c3 nonprofit corporation that provides one-to-one mentors to vulnerable youth for the purpose of coordinating the care and services that they need to survive. We try to help youth avoid some of the horrible pitfalls that they're likely to face if they don't have a proper safety net. And this program is brought to you every week at the same time, courtesy of Doc G. William Saunders, Ruben Rodriguez, and the fine people here at Hamilton Radio who allow us to use this airtime. Ruben is on the big board tonight. Welcome, sir. If we could get a little more volume in the studio, I'd appreciate it. And Robin is in the booth producing. So good to have both of you here. Thank you so much at home for tuning in. We've put together what I hope you will find to be an insightful and compelling view of the child welfare system. So get ready, because tonight on the radio hour, this is going to be a show you're going to want to tell your friends about tomorrow. Because first, we have Sherry Rubel. And Sherry is a photographer, and she's working on a dream. She's working on a plan to get micro houses built to house homeless people. Remember, you heard it here first. Plus, Caitlin Fair is with us. Caitlin is a supervisor for Mercer Youth Partial Care for Oaks Integrated Care, and she's here to discuss a rather amazing array of services that her organization offers. All about solutions tonight. That's what we are. We're not about problems tonight. We're about solutions. So stay with us. Stay with us for the full hour tonight, and I promise you'll walk away just a little richer for having done so. And stay with Hamilton Radio for the next 3 hours, because after the Age Out Angels radio hour, Dr. Felicia Nace comes in for an hour of her program called The Argument. Dr. Nace takes a stand on an issue, and you're welcome to call in and agree or disagree. And then Troy Alexander comes in at 8 with his show of inspiration. So keep it right here at Hamilton Radio all night long. Now, if you would be so kind, take a moment, open a separate browser, and find us on Facebook if you're listening on hamiltonradio.net. And go to my name, Greg Rapport, and hit that share button. Find us on Facebook, hit the share button, or even better, email your whole address book and tell everyone to go to www.hamiltonradio.net channel 2. Because what we need you to do is tell everyone in your world what we're talking about tonight. What you're going to hear applies to every geographic region, especially where you live. What we talk about here needs to be shared. Don't keep this private to yourself. Help us share it. Tell your friends. You know, there's a generation of young people out there who are being forgotten. The people who are with me tonight offer a solution, and caring people like you and me can't sit still while that happens. So we need you. And while you're doing that, let me remind you that we're here almost every Monday from 6 to 7 with the Age Out Angels radio hour. We have a great lineup of guests coming up, but there is no show next week. That's why I said we're here almost every Monday. No show next week. May 27th is Memorial Day. Have a barbecue, relax in the sun, hopefully. We'll be back on June 3rd with representatives from the New Jersey State Library who will tell us what you are missing if you're not accessing the State Library in your area. It's really quite an incredible place. Now, I'm not talking about your local library now, because you know what that looks like. And this is the State Library, and its resources are different and really quite amazing. Then on June 10th, it's going to get heavy. On June 10th, we're going to be talking with experts about reentry. Reentry is what happens to adults and juveniles when they go back into society after being incarcerated. This is a very serious topic, especially when it comes to our youth. So you're going to want to make sure you're here for the show on June 10th. And the list just goes on and on and on. Great guests every week, especially tonight. Don't go away. So be sure to tune in every Monday at 6 p.m. for our unfiltered look at the child welfare system and other related social services. This is where you come to get the whole truth, and I promise what you will hear tonight cannot be found on the nightly news. And hey, since we're live, you can write to us during the show in the comments field on Facebook. You can even call in. If you want to be a part of the show, we'd love to have you. You can join in the conversation or ask anything you like about child welfare. The number to call in is 609-807-2492. Again, 609-807-2492. Little setup for the end of the show. Very interesting thing happened this weekend. I met a gentleman during our exhibit at Pennington Days in Pennington, New Jersey. Age Out Angels was exhibiting there. And he was a nice enough fellow, and he gave a cash donation to Age Out Angels, so we thank him tremendously for that. But then he gave us an earful about how it's the government's fault they pay people to have babies. And then this, meaning age-out angels having to be in existence, is then the result of the government's basic stupidity of paying people to have babies. And I want to address that at the end of the show. If you have an opinion about it, feel free to write it to me during the show, and I'll refer to it at the end, give you a chance to think about it a little bit. Because, see, there's this inherent assumption that a lot of people have, that folks have babies as a means of gaming the system. And what I'd like to do at the end of the show is present a fuller picture of what all that means and maybe put it into a little bit of context. So later in the show, like right by the end in my final words, we're going to get into how babies are born. So I know that the kids are going to want to stay up and see that part of the show. Again, the number to call in is 609-807-2492. Talk to me either on the phone or in the comments field of my Facebook page. I'd be happy to read your opinions on the air. Hit that share button on Facebook. Stay where you are. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to be back in 1 minute with Sherry Rubel and Caitlin Fair. Hit the share button. Don't go away. And we are back. Welcome to my guest, Sherry Rubel. It's great to have you here on the Age Out Angels Radio Hour.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And Caitlin Fair, thanks for coming in after work and braving the rush hour traffic.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thanks. Thanks, both of you, for being here. So you're both in very different sort of pursuits, and you both come at this from a very different place. Caitlin, what's your backstory? How did you get started in child welfare or social services, however you want to call it?
Well, I grew up between Bucks County and Trenton, New Jersey. I pretty much moved to Trenton for all intents and purposes when I was about 13, and just kind of got an idea of how vastly different places that were very near to each other could be, and how vastly different people's needs were in different places depending on what their background was. And so I became interested in the idea of social work and what that meant when I was in high school. Then I went to college, got my undergraduate degree in psychology and sociology, went on to grad school, studied mental health and organizational leadership in grad school. All throughout that time I was working between the mental health and nonprofit sector and the education sector, but always with a tie to mental health and social services. So I started working with kids who actually were in the foster care system or who were involved with what was DIFUS at the time, which is now DCPMP, and then moved to working with individuals, adolescents who were at risk, adolescents who were reentering the community, or who were in some type of detention alternative program, and then moved into some behavioral assistant work and just continued to move into different spaces until I found the place that I am now, which is Mercer Youth Partial Care with Oaks Integrated Care, where I serve kind of all of those populations in one spot, and am able to provide a more intensive form of service to those kids than I ever have been previously, which I'm really, really grateful for.
Absolutely. Now, if you're listening at home, you're about to hear a completely different story. No, not completely, actually, because you actually did have some background intergenerationally, Sherry, speaking. But but I just want to point out to the folks who are listening at home that you don't have to have that, like, outrageously beautiful educational background that you have, where you're dual psych and soc, at the same time. That isn't 100% necessary in order to make a difference in the world. And part of what we do here is try to inspire our listeners to action, no matter where they are, in any geographic region. So, Sherry, what's your backstory?
Well, my background is primarily in arts and education and working in nonprofits. More recently, I am working in the Princeton public schools, which I'm getting ready to leave shortly.
Do they know that, or is that this the first time they're going to be hearing it tonight? Okay.
So, yeah, primarily my background is in the arts.
Excellent. I want to say hi to a new listener out there, Anna Maria. Thank you so much for tuning into the radio hour. So you're an artist.
Although I would like to say I did advocate and raise a challenged son, so I used to work with Child and Family Services as well, and I have been involved in advocacy for kids at risk.
Okay, but also you told me that your mother was also involved in some way in launching nonprofits or something?
Yeah, my mom, she used to be the assistant director of the State Arts Council. She created this State Teen Arts Festival and the countywide Teen Arts Festival. She used to run Summer Arts Institute and a number of art and education programs for also kids at risk. So she created nonprofits most of her life and worked in arts and education. I worked alongside her.
Yeah. So this is something that is sort of steeped in your blood, but you didn't exactly head that sociology direction.
Correct.
The same way that Caitlin did. Now, do you know the backstory of Oaks Integrated Care? Can you tell us more about the organization?
Yeah, so originally Oaks Integrated Care was Twin Oaks, and then several years ago they merged with Greater Trenton Behavioral Health. And so they absorbed quite a few programs in the Mercer County area that were previously under Greater Trenton, and began providing services, additional services in the Mercer County area. Now, the organization is very huge. It's a statewide organization, and their primary focus is providing residential services and providing services for individuals in the DDD population. But
and let me just interrupt you for a second. Sure. DDD, to our listeners out there, is developmentally disabled. What's the last D?
Well, it's the department of the developmentally disabled, or something along those lines.
Right.
Division or something like that. So there are people who are in that in the state, involved with the state, and have been diagnosed as developmentally disabled and receive services through the state for that reason.
And they've been around a long time.
Oh, yes.
This is like not a new.
No, Oaks has been around previously Twin Oaks, has been around for quite some time. They actually also recently merged with Steininger, and then another organization that I can't remember off the top of my head currently, but they have had several mergers and adopted many different programs through those mergers. And so they have been able to kind of broaden the array of services that they provide, expanding outside of the DDD population into addiction services, into mental health services, into crisis services, and they have now a certified behavioral health clinic in Mercer County as well, where they provide care management, primary care, physical health, ambulatory detox, and a number of other services as well.
Right. So, I mean, this is a really serious organization. I see here it says that they impact 34,000 lives a year, which tells you how big the problem is, because when we look around and say, goodness, there just aren't enough services to go around to meet the demand. There aren't enough CASAs to meet the demand of foster kids. There aren't enough mental health services. And yet, you're reaching 34,000 people a year, and it's somehow not enough. Mm-hmm. So we need to, as a society, I think we need to rethink, how we treat our people. Now, really? So that's Oaks Integrated Care. Now, an established organization that's been around for 40 or 50 years. Sherry, you had an idea You started what you're doing with basically with an idea. Tell everyone what your idea is.
Well, the idea wasn't mine. It was just something that we saw as being a very practical solution to problems that were not being fully addressed.
This idea does have a backstory itself, right?
Yes, it does. Sure. So the backstory is I'm a photographer. I had been working with Patch.com, which was an online newspaper. It's still in existence, but at the time, myself and some other people were getting laid off, and I had taken a trip to Mexico to visit my sister, where my sister lives, and I was photographing and getting back into photojournalism even more after I got laid off. And when I came back home, I was looking for a photographic project close to home, and I laughed because I say, I never thought a Google search would change my life so much, but it actually did, because I Googled homelessness.
Goodness.
And I discovered Tent City in Lakewood, New Jersey. So I decided to take a ride down there one day and brought my camera and thought I'd go down and start a photographic project photographing within that Tent City community.
And so had you made a career out of photographing homeless people before that?
No, not at all.
That was your first experience with that. When was that?
Well, I had always been attracted to photographing people who were in different types of situations, poverty and things of that nature. But I hadn't ever specifically focused on homelessness.
What was it that attracted you about that?
Well, I just thought it was something that was very prevalent and that could use some attention, locally in terms of the lack of affordable housing, and homelessness in general seemed to be really growing in New York City and around the nation. You could see, homelessness was becoming a very, very large issue.
I guess I'm looking for, what was the cross-section between you as an artist photographer and the visual image, and what you were feeling in your heart about possibly services or helping or something like that those folks needed?
Using art to raise awareness about social issues.
Art being the tool.
Art being the vehicle to raise awareness about social issues. My regional editor from Patch had also gotten laid off, and he saw what I was doing because I posted some photos online. And he decided that he wanted to come in and start doing some writing about it as well. So we were working together along with a filmmaker that he had brought in, and we were working together and individually as artists, and our goal was to create a body of work that would assist in raising awareness about the issue of homelessness.
Absolutely. And we're going to get to your program in just 1 second, okay? But first I want to get back to Caitlin for a minute. You have to define this term, because the work that you do, they use the word partial. So what exactly is the division, and what does the word partial mean?
Sure, it's a great question. I am not a big fan of all the jargon that is involved in mental health because I feel like it creates a barrier between people who are looking for care and the actual services, because people often don't know what things are or what they're even looking for in terms of what the lingo is. Right. Essentially what a partial care is a more intensive outpatient than kind of your traditional individual once a week therapy session. It involves a psychiatric element. So our program is a program where the kids come 3 to 5 days a week for 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
So in our particular program, they come after school, they spend 4 hours with us, and they do primarily group therapy. They also have some individual sessions on an as needed basis, and then we also have psychiatric services available, which is one of kind of the hallmarks of partial care, is that there is also this psychiatric component.
Like
so
private? psychiatric?
Yeah, so we have an on-staff advanced practice nurse who does all of our psychiatric services. She does a psychiatric evaluation for every kid who comes to the program. She would decide if there's medication indicated for that particular youth, and then if so, she would, if the family is on board with that, she would do the prescribing for them and do all of their medication monitoring as a part of the service that they receive through our program. So they get the group therapy piece, they get the psychiatric piece, and also there's some individual that's tied into it kind of on an as-needed basis.
So is it partial because it's like not a live-in program? They're not on a 72-hour psych hold.
Right, exactly.
Like
So it's kind of like a step in between traditional outpatient and inpatient situation. So
I
it's
see.
kind of that middle ground between someone who doesn't necessarily qualify for an inpatient hospitalization, but needs more intensive services and something more consistent than kind of a traditional outpatient setting, and then also perhaps requires or needs that psychiatric support as well.
And to access these services now, are you part of the children's system of care? And so people have to sort of connect with Perform Care first and then get referred out?
They don't have
through the
to.
system?
That's one way that they can do it. So we do partner with Capital County Children's Collaborative, and they refer to us for individuals who don't have Medicaid, who are involved with the children's system of care. They can be authorized to receive our services through the CMO.
Right.
But we also accept Medicaid individually, so if a youth or a family has Medicaid as their insurance, we're able to provide services. So
CMO, by the way, is Care Management Organization.
Yes.
I know the acronyms just roll off your tongue after a while, and people in Sweden are going, huh? So they can be referred through the Children's System of Care, through the Capital County Children's Collaborative, through a care management organization, or
through themselves.
Through their own
We
insurance.
have individuals who have gone through our program previously who are now parents who send their kids to us because they feel like the program was so helpful for them. They want us to provide services for their children. We get referrals from schools, we get referrals from hospitals for adolescents who are maybe stepping down from an inpatient facility, from outpatient facilities that think that a child perhaps needs more intensive services. So really they can come from anywhere. We also get some county funding that allows us to provide services for uninsured individuals. So people who don't have any insurance are able to also receive services through our program without having to worry about being billed for those services.
Excellent. Now, we've had people from like the Henry J. Austin, I forget what the rest of that is, Henry J. Austin Health Services, I guess they are. How are you different from sort of an organization like that?
So I'm not sure what all services Henry J. Austin provides. I know, if I'm not mistaken, that they have a crisis screening center. So we get referrals from all of the crisis screening centers in the area at the various different hospitals.
So you would work in conjunction with an organization like that. It's nice to see nonprofits working together in that way. All right, Sherry, you have to, we can't keep them in suspense anymore, so we have to tell them this idea that you're putting forth to use micro houses.
Well, during my time in Tent City, there was, the whole TV show coming up and about micro-housing on television, and people were developing micro-housing communities for homeless people. Once I left Tent City, I brought a proposal to Senator Sweeney's office, and his legislative aides actually drafted some legislation for me from that proposal. And so there is a bill currently in the legislation that is called the Tiny Home Pilot Program, and it's currently sponsored by Senator Singleton and Senator Stack.
How did you get the legislature to even talk to you?
Yeah, pretty amazing, right? That's what passion and determination does. When you're passionate and determined to get something done, things just happen. And the whole experience honestly has been rather remarkable journey, because I just reached out and seemed to be able to connect to great people who help me with different things, and then those things move to other things, and it just continually is happening. Like I got an email today from somebody who wants to help me move it forward, who I think is a great person who might really be able to provide some things that I need moving forward with this project. So like just out of the blue, I got an email, so stuff like that just happens all the time.
So we call them silver threads.
Okay.
People that you didn't know previously who suddenly become, fairy godparents, so to speak, and help you.
So currently there's the bill that I'm now been working on getting passed for 6 years. It was under primary sponsorship with Senator Wozniak initially, and now it's under sponsorship with Senator Singleton and Stack, and it's stuck in the Budget and Appropriations Committee where, I hate to say it, but Senator Sarlo allowed the bill to die 2 previous times. And I'm really hoping that people will contact Senator Sarlo and ask him to move the bill forward. It's called the Tiny Home Pilot Program, and it's Bill S177.
The question, I'm just trying to figure out how to phrase it. How big or how tiny is a tiny home? Give us an idea.
The homes in the bill are about 300 square feet.
10 by 30. 300 square feet. And that includes like living, dining, kitchen?
Well, there's several ways to look at a community. A lot of times people are looking at this as providing housing. I look at it as providing housing, but more so than that, providing a community for people to gain job skills training and to become empowered through the building of the tiny homes and sort of self-governing their own communities. So, what was the question?
Well, I'm just trying to get a feel, give the audience a feel for what the size of this actually is. 10 by 30 sounds like it would be like as big as an RV.
Yeah, so they're about 300 square feet, and you can either put toilets and kitchenettes and whatnot inside of them, or you can build a community and have shared facilities. So you would have a shared kitchen and shared bathroom facility, or even you could do it with porta-johns if a municipality wanted to provide services of that nature, garbage and porta-john services.
Right. I think when people hear tiny home, they just don't have an idea of what it is, and the word tiny infers too small for me. Right? That's just an inference that you get from the word tiny. So I just looked up, and a Class A motorhome ranges from 21 to 45 feet with an average length of 33 feet and about 10 feet high. So what you're talking about is essentially an RV that people might pay $100,000 to buy and take across country and think, ain't this grand, right?
Sure, and a lot of these tiny homes, people see them on wheels, so they're usually on trailers, and they're being pulled on, like somebody would pull an RV on the back of a truck or whatever. So there is that style of tiny home. The tiny homes that I'm kind of working towards are more transitional houses that are on little planks, I guess they would, I'm not sure what those studs are called,
right.
But they would not be permanent houses that are, settled onto the ground. They would be able to be moved, but they're not on wheels.
And yet they would have to be on some kind of a platform or something, because they're too big to just exist, on the dry ground like that. Hey, by the way, some nice folks are listening to the show tonight. Sophia is out there listening. Patricia writes, "Hi, Catlin. You and your staff are awesome." And P.S., she also writes, "And thank you, Age Out Angels." So that's pretty neat.
Patricia, thank you so much.
Patricia's a friend of the show and clearly a friend of your organization as well. Troy is with us. Ian is with us. Ian, it's great to have you here. That's the first time I think I've seen your name there. Shayna is out there listening. Shayna, thank you so much for joining into our conversation tonight. We're going to take a short break. and give you a chance to hit that share button on Facebook. So please don't go away. And when we come back, we're going to have more with Caitlin Fair and Sherry Rubel and talk about how we're going to make these tiny houses into a reality. Okay? Don't go away. Back in a minute. And we are back. Before we go further, I do need to thank all the people who made donations to Age Out Angels this week. We thank you so very much for your generosity. And hey, if you have an employee giving fund or matching gifts foundation associated with your place of work, we would certainly appreciate your contacting us and telling us how we can participate in that. Private message me on Facebook or email me directly, greg@ageoutangels.org. And I want to remind everyone that you can donate to Age Out Angels every time you make a purchase from Amazon. All you have to do is designate Age Out Angels to be your Amazon Smile designee, and a portion of your payment will go directly to Age Out Angels without it costing you 1 penny more. I can make it easy for you to designate Age Out Angels as your Amazon Smile recipient. All you have to do, contact me either via Facebook or greg@ageoutangels.org, and I can send you a link that will take you directly to our designation. Back now with Sherry Rubel and Caitlin Fair. So Caitlin, can we talk a little bit about, more specifically about who it is that you work with? What, do they have a common set of problems? I can imagine that, and you work with teens, right?
Yes,
and you're in the
correct.
Adolescent area.
Children and teens.
Okay. I can imagine that children, especially in a group with other people, might not exactly walk in the door feeling like they want to share. Right? How forthcoming are they?
That's a fair assessment. Ironically enough, most of our kids, I think, do want to share, but they have not, to this juncture in their lives, found a place where they felt safe enough to share what they were honestly experiencing and honestly feeling. And so I think, for me, and I say this often to my staff and to my kids, the most important thing that I believe we are tasked with is to create a space that is safe for the kids that we work with, because for some of them it is the only safe space that exists for them. A lot of them, a good majority of our kids come from the Trenton community, and so just by virtue of, and this is something we also talk about often at program, just by virtue of living in Trenton, where there is a high crime rate and there is a consistent amount of violence, whether you witness it firsthand or just know that it exists in your community, that is traumatic. That's a traumatic experience. And so some of the kids that come to program don't necessarily even feel safe in the places where they live. And so it's tantamount, as far as I'm concerned, for us to create a space where they feel safe, where they feel secure enough that they are able to be honest about what they're experiencing, what they're feeling. And I think most of them do, certainly not all of them. No program has a 100% success rate. If that were the case, then then we wouldn't, we would be just replicating that model over and over again.
You'd be on CNN.
Or at least, right? But I do believe that because we place such an emphasis on that and creating an environment and a dynamic between not only the staff and the kids, but the kids amongst themselves, this dynamic of a small family, a small functional family, that we're able to create that space where they're able to be honest about where they are and what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and start to really work through some of the stuff that they've been through.
Do you have like anything written, like do the kids come in and sign a contract that has things on it like what's said in this room stays in this room? You don't talk about, Fight Club outside of Fight Club. Are there things like that?
We do.
Boundaries, are they written?
Yes. So in a couple of different ways we do this. The kids and their families get kind of a briefing at their time of intake. So I do all of our intakes for the program, and we talk about confidentiality and what that means, what they can expect as far as that's concerned, which is essentially anything that they talk about, with the exception that if it's something where there is a viable threat that they may hurt themselves or someone else, is confidential to the group and to those present, unless we discuss it together as something that we're going to talk to someone else about, i.e. their parents or school or someone else, as a way to help work through something. But that's something that would be agreed upon between the staff and the child. And then every single day we have a list of expectations that the kids helped to create, and we read those expectations at the start of every day. So that is the second of three things that we do at the start of every day. And do they necessarily pay attention every time we read them? No. But
you're resetting the clock, basically.
And you will hear them oftentimes. One of the things that I love is that every now and then someone will violate an expectation, and a kid will just quote an expectation verbatim from the expectation list to kind of remind that person, this is not how we do things here.
How many people are there in this group that we're envisioning now in our minds?
So our maximum capacity for the entire program is 30 kids. We usually have an average of about 20 to 25 active kids on our roster at any given time, and usually we have an average of 10 to 15 kids who attend program on a daily basis. So our kids don't all come every day, but usually there is somewhere between 10 and 15 every day.
And what's the age range within a program on a given day?
10 to 18.
Okay.
So we actually have a separate group for our 10 to 13-year-olds, or 10 to 12-year-olds, depending on kind of where they are in their development. And they join us for some groups, and it's really kind of cool to see the way the older kids interact with the younger ones and kind of take them on as younger siblings and help guide them through some stuff. And then there is a portion of the day or some days that the younger group attends where they separate out into their own group and do their own thing, and the older kids do their own group separately.
You know, it totally freaked me out when I first learned about it. I had never even considered the possibility that a child would be violated, physically, sexually, violated before they had speech.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that then, later in their life, when they had the opportunity to let it out, essentially, express, their feelings and stuff like that, they didn't have the narrative capability to understand what happened to them. Is that something that you see from time to time?
Absolutely. We see that often.
You deal with that.
So I also, in another part of my life, am an energetic healer and a yoga instructor. And so I really try to combine my background in trauma and mental health with my background in body-based healing and energetic healing. So we do a lot of mindfulness and body-based work. We actually have a group that's dedicated specifically to understanding trauma and how it manifests in our body, even when that experience may have occurred prior to us having language, or may have occurred and we don't even have a memory of it, because many of our kids have been violated when they were young enough that they don't have memory of it, or they have repressed that memory. But it manifests as behaviors that we see crop up in school or at home or wherever the case may be in the community. And so we do a lot of psychoeducation about what that looks like for people, including ourselves, and incorporate a lot of in that group particularly, a lot of body-based responses to trauma triggers, and just recognizing, we may not understand what caused this to be a trigger, but we understand that this is a trigger. And so how do I regulate my response to that trigger?
Absolutely. I mean, there's PTSD and there's, sexual assault and there's all these, but it all sort of is umbrellaed with the word trauma.
Yeah.
Right? And it's trauma no matter, what form it takes. And that could mean hearing gunshots while you're trying to sleep. It could mean knowing someone who's been killed. Like, it doesn't necessarily have had to happen to you directly.
Absolutely.
But it could be, coming from your environment. Of course, frequently when a child's removed from home, something has happened to them. Whatever it is, being starved or sent to school dirty and that whole sort of thing. But it all comes down to trauma, and then that trauma has an effect on the rest of their lives, right? Unless you're in a position to do something about it.
Yeah.
Do they have to want to be helped? Don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
And that's something that we also talk about often at program, is that, this only works to the degree that you work it. And that is kind of our mantra. So, and some days the kids don't want to work it, and that's fine. We have to kind of meet them where they are. But the goal is, and that's one of the things that I love about our program, is that we are significantly, our average length of stay is significantly longer than most partial care. So most partial care programs are like 3 to 6 weeks. Our kids, our average length of stay for our kids is 6 months to 1 year. So they get an opportunity not only to learn about what we're talking about, learn skills, but also practice using those skills in their kind of vacuum of program, and then take those skills and carry them out into the community and kind of trial and error them.
And be a year older,
Yeah.
In that process. I mean, because they're growing at that same time, and that a year is big, at that stage. But I mean, you could picture people who are suffering in that way, slipping into like drug habits and addictions, and then not wanting, to get help, because that's, comforting in its own bizarre way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talk a lot about how people self-manage and self-medicate different things that they may have going on. And for those individuals who are not quite ready to maybe really begin the healing process, our hope is just that there is some seed that's planted in their time with us, that at some point they come to a juncture where perhaps they are ready to begin that actual work of healing, and they remember something from their time, and can kind of have an easier way of finding their journey to healing from whatever that seed was.
It's a long path. Hey, Michael joined us from New York. Hey, Michael, it's good to have you aboard. Todd is with us. Melvin's with us. Danielle and Michael. So what a great group we have tonight who have written in and said hi. That's wonderful. Sherry, how are you going to do this? How are you going to build? How many?
Well, it's just interesting listening to Caitlin, because, it's all about mental health and stigma. Same with the homeless population. Mental health and stigma issues are a big obstacle, because people, they see those problems, and they're like, how are you going to address these problems within the homeless population? So that's definitely a concern. And the stigma attached to homelessness. These people all have stories, just like all of these children do. They all have a life history that led them to the point that they're at. They still should be able to have some sort of shelter, rather than, a cardboard box or, an alleyway or under a bridge somewhere.
Little dignity.
So, exactly.
That's right.
To provide them with some dignity. It's not really a handout. The idea is to empower them to want to better them, their own lives. So as far as building houses is not really a problem. I see that more and more. We have volunteers. We have people. I have organizations and nonprofit organizations that want to work with us. The problem is really political will. and land.
The land, I was going to ask,
Yeah,
where do you get, how do
political
you get the
will
land?
and land. Well, we want to, so in the bill it talks about a municipality wanting to waive the zoning regulations and requirements
Yes,
in order
yes,
to provide
absolutely,
for
yeah.
those types of things. And then if they do so, the incentive is that they'll get credits towards their fair share housing requirements. So that is an incentive. Really, these communities can be built through volunteerism and community engagement.
I see. Now, is your plan to do this throughout New Jersey and then encourage others to do it in other states? Is that?
Yeah, well, believe it or not, we're actually looking to try to pull one of these off in Trenton.
In Trenton, in the city?
Trenton itself. Right now, we are working on that proposal and looking at, all of the questions and being able to have answers for all the things that we might encounter, bringing this to council. But any municipality that, part of the problem is that a lot of municipalities feel like they take on all of the burden of homelessness, like they are the ones that are taking on the full response. They have the Code Blue facilities, they have the shelters, they have, services, and then there are other municipalities that really don't have anything at all because they don't think that they have the problem. So a lot of the issue is that these municipalities that are trying to tackle the issue want the municipalities, surrounding municipalities, to partake a little bit more in the process of providing services and whatnot.
Sure.
So,
I think they worry a lot about insurance, liability and stuff like that. I
again,
really do.
stigma and,
Right? So what, but I think what people who are listening to this show may or may not be aware of is how quickly one can become homeless. There are a lot of ways, certainly drug addiction and alcohol abuse and stuff like that are some of them, but there's other ways too, like a long-term illness that wipes out your finances, is something that can make you homeless. A sudden fire and you're uninsured in your house and suddenly, you can be, there's a lot of ways.
More and more, it's happening more and more. The homeless crisis is growing. It's not improving. We really need to start thinking outside the box. And, their community, people want to assist in resolving these problems. Then the government, politicians need to allow us to do that. Zoning regulations and not passing bills and things of that nature. Government sort of gets in the way. If we had ability to take some land and do some building, we could provide housing. It's very simple.
Right.
It might not be perfect, and it might not have sewage and water and all of this stuff that people see as a necessity, but there are solar panels and there are toilets that you don't need sewage for, and building a sustainable community through sustainable elements can be done as well.
So then you keep referring back to the community concept of this. So are you envisioning 40 or 50 or 500 micro homes where people then have access to other things like, maybe job training or health-related skills?
Want a small pilot program in a location where there were wraparound services available.
Right.
Already naturally there.
That makes Trenton a candidate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it can happen either way. But we're not looking to make a huge pilot program. I'm just really trying to get a pilot program. There are pilot programs, there are programs that are happening all over the country already. There are people doing this. There are people building micro-housing and providing housing for vets, for, homeless people, just low-income people in general. And New Jersey should be getting on board and opening up their minds and, to this concept.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful how you're attacking this from the legislative legislative point of view, because that's kind of what moves mountains. A lawyer that we had on the program a while ago said you can stand on the steps of the State House all day long with your sign, but it's lawsuits that move mountains, That's what gets things done. So what's in the near future for Oaks Integrated Care and your particular aspect of it, working with young people?
So I think the biggest thing is just continuing to kind of plug away on a day-to-day basis at the work that we do. It's kind of that, just
one
every
at a time,
day.
huh?
Yeah, every one day at a time thing. We do have an annual event that we began 2 years ago called the Day of Healing, which is a community-wide day that we invite the public to come and participate in various different activities related to healing, related to being aware and knowledgeable about what trauma is, how we're impacted by it, and how we can support ourselves and our loved ones in coping with that.
When is that?
We don't have a date yet, but it will be sometime this summer, likely in mid-August.
You'll have to let us know.
Absolutely.
Okay. And anyone who wants to know more about Oaks Integrated Care can go online to Oaks Int Care, OAKSINT care.org,
Yep.
right? Mm-hmm. And learn all about that. What's your next step, Sherry, with microhomes?
Well, I would like to put out there that it would be great if there are people who support the concept of microhousing, that they reach out to their legislators, Craig Coughlin in the Assembly and Senator Sarlo in the Senate. Just call your legislators and tell them about Bill S177 and A3072.
Say it again.
S177, A3072. It's the same bill, but one is on the Senate end and one is on the Assembly end. For a bill to pass, you have to be able to get it through both the Senate end and the Assembly end. So, so if people are out there listening and they like the idea of developing microhousing, then they should work on calling their legislators and ask them to pass this bill.
Incredible. It's a wonderful idea. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'm going to have some final words. In fact, I am going to tell you where babies come from. So stay right where you are. There's still time to hit that share button on Facebook. Don't go away. And now the music plays. We are back. So where do babies come from, huh? I think it's sad, actually, that there are so many people out there. In fact, I believe there's a preponderance of belief that babies are born into an economic point of view. And what I mean by that is that people believe that folks think that having a child will enable people to game the system and basically get free money and free housing and free food, and that they will then live on Easy Street off the backs of taxpayers. And the fact is that, while there's always someone who will abuse the system, nothing could really be farther from the truth, and no one's getting rich off of having babies. There might be a few people who think that way, but the situation is so much more complex than that. And I want you to think about what I'm going to say now, because it's not something that a lot of the people who listen into this show actually have that much of a window into. What we're talking about here is a culture born into poverty. The people who are having these babies were born into poverty. They don't remember what life may have been like before the 50s and the 60s. In the case of Trenton, the riots in the 60s. But wherever you live, in Atlantic City, it was urban renewal in the 60s. You know, you can pick something that turned the urban environment into an area of poverty. So they're born into a situation where opportunities are few and far between. Now, the first male that a girl falls in love with is her dad. And unfortunately, in a majority of homes in an urban environment, there is no stable male role model. And that's a subject for a whole other show. I mean, there's a million reasons why that is. But it's not so simple as he just walks out. So there's a tremendous void in the life of a little girl. And then, just like most kids, teenagers make vows that they can't keep. So a girl grows up in an unstable housing situation. She grows up without a father figure in her life, and she vows that that will never happen to her child. And all of that bravado, of course, has no plan behind it, no substance to back it up. So by the time this young lady is now in the 14 to 18-year-old age range, you have this perfect storm of misinformation swirling around in their heads, just in time for some young man to come along and convince them that he's the answer, that he will solve all their issues, that he loves them. And then that becomes the first man in their lives that they look at and think, well, this is it now. I've figured out how this whole life thing works. 40 weeks later, there's a baby. And 3 weeks after that, he's gone. And like I said, he could be gone for a lot of reasons. He could have been arrested for standing while black. There's a million reasons that he might not be in the picture anymore. She does the best that she can because she knows that she made that vow. And you know, if you raise children, you know that when they're infants, it's actually way easier to handle them than it is when they become toddlers. Toddlers is when the real fun begins. The terrible twos weren't named that for no reason. So, but then also she has to work because the father isn't offering support, or maybe he's in and out of jail, and maybe she has to find daycare and budget the little bit that social services gives her, which, by the way, they reduce if she goes to work. And she has to come to the realization that while maybe you can buy Twinkies with food stamps, you can't buy diapers. And it's just a matter of time, really, before the whole thing becomes insurmountable. And that's assuming that that baby wasn't born out of rape, which we're starting to realize happens way more often than you think. So I would offer a humble request to all of the people who are right to life advocates. And I would say this having raised 2 children and believing wholeheartedly that the moment that stick comes out with a plus sign, that that's a child. No one looks at that stick and says, guess what, we have a fetus. Everyone says, I'm going to have a baby. But it's not about the right to life. It's about the right to live. And I would like to propose that we have a committee of legislators that is comprised of all of the women who are in the Senate and all of the women who are in the House of Representatives, and let them get together and let them decide if government should actually play a role in this sort of thing. Because people are not having babies to get rich. Babies come from a lot of reasons, and I hope tonight you learned where babies come from. But the fact is our bodies are made to make babies at 18. It's how nature works. And it's not something that you can legislate or teach abstinence or anything like that. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another hour talking about youth who should matter more in our political and economic discourse than they do. And we thank you so much for tuning into our program and maybe helping us spread the word. Again, we offer humble thanks to Hamilton Radio, to my most incredible guests, Sherry Rubel and Caitlin Fair. Thank you both so much for being here. Thanks to our engineer, Ruben. Music provided by Angel Fire. Our webmaster is Carmen Garcia Valera. Our social media specialist is Bailey Braverman. No show next week, May 27th. Back June 3rd with representatives from the New Jersey State Library. Stay tuned for Dr. Nace. So until June 3rd, let's make these next 2 weeks the best 2 weeks ever. Have a great evening, everyone.
Good evening and welcome to HamiltonRadio.net. I am your host, Dr. Nace, and you are listening to The Argument. I just want to say hi to my colleague, Ray Rapport. He just did the show on Age Out Angels. It's always terrific. Thank you, Ray. And so tonight I have a very special guest with me. And we are talking